You're listening to
CRST,
the podcast
from Bryn Mawr Communications.
Welcome to another episode of CRST, the podcast. I'm Laura Livesey, and I'll be your host. I'm the CEO of Livesey Solar Practice Builders. We help ophthalmologists in 40 countries to put systems in place that double revenue every 3 years. So today on the podcast, we have a very interesting topic. We're going to dive deeper into the April cover story of CRST on the practice scaling roadmap. So the roadmap is a series of 6 predictable stages that you need to travel through as you grow, scale, and maybe one day ultimately exit your private practice. We all want that, hopefully, to build an asset and exit at some point or have the option to exit it. So without a roadmap, the stages are actually kind of invisible. I think you might have some general ideas, but there are 6, predictable, probably arguable, some kind of fuzziness between systems, but I think there are some lines that we need to be aware of. And if you ignore those lines, they can really cause unnecessary delay and blockers to your growth. So by the end of the podcast today, you should be able to put a pin on the map and answer the question, so where am I on this practice growth roadmap today? Because it should change. Hopefully over time you're progressing, right? So to get at that, we're going to talk about 2 things. So ways you can identify which of the 6 stages you're in, and we'll try to go out of our way to kind of point out the names of the stages. I know we're going to throw around the names and we'll try not to make it sort of boring and jargony. So there's 6 stages. And then what should you focus on if you want to master the stage? And I think this is it. It's about mastery and leveling up to the next stage. So those are the 2 things. It's where are you at? And then how do you get past this stage? So my guest today is Rod Solar. So he's the co-founder and scalable business advisor at Livesey Solar. Rod is pretty well known in the ophthalmology industry globally, with regular columns in CRST, The Ophthalmologist, and iNews, as well as speaking at conferences around the world like ASCRS, ESCRS, ACOS, and many, many others. So over the past 20 odd years, he's worked with hundreds of ophthalmology teams to help them move up the 6 growth stages that we're just about to talk about. And so Rod routinely unlocks millions in annual revenue for individual practices. So I think we've got the great guest here today to speak about this. So welcome, Rod.
Hey, happy to be here. Thanks.
Cool. So I think we're just going to jump in to the stages. So let's kind of to do some level sets. So why do you break growth into stages in the first place? Like, aren't we all just, trying to get more eyes or get more cases?
Well, the most successful people in business see business as a game. And so if you want to level up, you need to know what problem you're trying to solve at each stage of the journey, at each level. So if it's like a video game, imagine that you have a video game with levels. Each level has a boss, and each boss requires a different skill in order to beat that boss. And you want to know what skill that is so that you don't have to keep playing the same level again and again and again. And each stage of the journey is defined by a core constraint, or the boss, and a corresponding trigger for growth, which is the skill you need to master in order to progress through the levels of the game.
Okay, so we have our stage name, and then we have the constraint of the stage, and then the thing we have to do to break the constraint. Okay, then let's take a look now at the stages themselves. So give us a bird's eye view. So what are the 6 stages? Maybe try to do it in one breath so we can move on to the juicy parts of like getting into the stages, but maybe a one-liner for each stage.
Like we said, we have 6 stages, and the first stage is monetize. And that's where you essentially have never sold anything and you need to make your first sale. And number 2 is where you advertise. Really, at this stage, no one knows that you exist, and so you need to let more people know about your stuff. And number 3 is stabilize. Stabilize is creating early success that generates chaos. And at this stage, you need to calm the chaos that you've created. Number 4 is prioritization. You're doing everything for everyone, and you need to focus on your ideal customers. And stage 5 is where you productize. And productize is really, people aren't buying anything from you after you've treated them the first time. So now you need to offer your second premier product or offer to reduce the amount of money it costs to generate customers compared to the amount of money you generate from customers. Now, number 6 is you optimize. And that's where size, people, volume, facility space, it brings the chaos back. And now you need to shift from doing more to doing better. And that's how you can grow past this stage. Now, importantly, every constraint is a boss. It has an associated trigger, a skill you need to master in order to help you move from one level to the next.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's try to put ourselves listeners in the seat now. Where are you? Which is the stage that, burns a little for you right now? Which one is kind of maybe not hair on fire, maybe hair on fire. Some of these are definitely hair on fire problems. But so are you monetized? You haven't sold really much. You got to make your first few sales. Advertising, no, not very many people know you exist. Are you stabilizing? Do you have a bit of early success and now it's getting a little bit chaotic? Do you need to prioritize? Have you shifted from kind of needing to get some demand into having like too many patients and systemized systems are kind of weak? Or do you need to productize to kind of start selling more to the same customers? Or are you so big that the chaos has returned? So where are you right now? Which stage burns for you? So if you want to just think about that in your head as we proceed. So I think while they do that, let's kind of move on to the first stages. So we'll probably maybe we can kind of group them together because I think they just merge nicely. You get your first patients and then you kind of move on to the next stage fairly quickly, typically. But there are some notable kind of like lines in both stage 1 to monetize and stage 2 to advertise. So what would you say about, first of all, let's just kind of get into the pain of monetize.
Basically, your pain is that your practice makes no money. At this stage, you're just starting out. You're all by yourself. And you graduate from this stage by making your first sale. Now, here's the thing about money and doctors is you feel nervous about charging money for what you're asking for. You're anxious about what people will pay. You feel overwhelmed by all these new things that you have to learn. And you're pretty proud when someone finally says yes to your request to trade what you offer for the money they have. So at this stage, you really need to focus on making your service better, telling people about what you offer, ideally those who already know you, taking care of your first customers as well as you possibly can, learning how to ask for money, setting up very basic systems to track that money, and then manage that money very carefully. Because at this stage, you have very little, and every dollar is really very important.
Okay, so you've done that now. You've made the very challenging. It's almost like breaking the 4-minute mile a little bit, where you don't even believe it's possible. Sometimes in the beginning, it's this mind. It's often a mindset of like, yes, it will happen once you kind of get going. And I meet a lot of surgeons that are kind of just starting, and it is kind of this gargantuan task. So you've gotten past that. That's awesome. So now you're into the advertising phase. So what's the constraint at that point?
Well, the constraint at this point is that your sales are inconsistent, right? You're a doer now, whereas before you were a starter, you're a doer. You're still alone, and you might have, say, a locum freelancer that could be a personal assistant, a medical secretary, a locum optometrist. Really, to graduate from this stage, you have to let more people know about what you offer, and that means advertising every single day. And by advertising, I don't necessarily mean paying for ads. That might be the fourth thing that you do. Before that, you probably want to reach out to warm reach outs, maybe make 100 reach outs a day to warm reach outs, because that's what it takes to get traction. Or you might want to spend 100 minutes on writing free content and posting it on social media. Or you might want to spend 100 minutes networking and reaching out to optometrists who don't yet know you so they can become warm referrals. And finally, you might want to spend $100 a day on advertising on paid traffic or paid social. You feel overwhelmed by all of the moving parts now. You're excited about growth, but you're worried about the consistency. And I meet a lot of entrepreneurs at this stage. They're really proud of becoming a real business, but they're stressed about managing others. They know that getting more help is going to cost them money, and they're really, really concerned about the money flow at this stage.
Okay. And do you have any clients that you've met recently that are kind of going through this or have experienced this that you could kind of give us some of their thoughts kind of that you've, we speak to people like this quite often. So anything else you want to add, just on a personal note from what other surgeons have told us?
Well, I think this is a very, very common stage. Many, many businesses are in this stage. In fact, like almost 100% of businesses go through this stage, right? They're always one person with perhaps somebody they haven't just yet hired yet and are using as a locum. And like I said, the biggest challenge that these folks face is really making the jump, which is the biggest transition in all of entrepreneurship. Typically, what I find here is that people have one foot in one place and another foot in the entrepreneurial boat. The first place is the stable place. The second place, the entrepreneurial boat, is very, very shaky and unknown. And so what occurs, unless they decide to jump in with both feet, they end up having their legs stretched in two different directions and they really have trouble moving forward. You can imagine what it's like, right? So this is the biggest challenge that I encounter with many clients that I work with who are early in their journey and are at this stage. It's all about getting the faith and the confidence to jump in with both feet and understanding that the risk is worth the reward and that the potential misery that they're walking away from is certain, while the potential may be uncertain, but it's still better than the certain misery that they're leaving.
Yeah, nice. No, I think that it is underreported task. It's quite Herculean going from medicine to business, and it's not just a hey, I'm starting my private practice, which people say quite nonchalantly, but starting a business is a thing. It's a big thing. So I think that you really do have to kind of take that moment to pat yourself on the back once you've done it, because it's not nothing. It takes a lot. On top of your already chock block full schedule of what you're doing with patients. So yeah, it's a challenge, and we see this. Okay, so we've done this. We've gotten in, and then I think we get to a plateau stage. So we get to stabilize. So now we've got some people on board. We are getting some patients in. The practice is starting to gain a bit of traction. You're doing a great job, so you're getting 5-star results. Certainly in premium practices, this is the case consistently. However, I think where things start to become a little frustrating, especially for the surgeon, is the customer experience. At the beginning, you've often got a vision of exceptional care, exceptional service. I want to do this in my own way. I have a vision for this. And I think what happens at Stabilize is often the customer service takes a lot of work. And the many touch points with the customer, and you're seeing where it doesn't match the high level of medical care and it drives you mad. So what can we do about this, Rod?
Well, now you have needs to see yourself as a trainer, right? And that is probably a situation that you're somewhat familiar with. Many entrepreneurs at least did a little bit of training in their past, but maybe they did it well, maybe they didn't do it so well. What I always advise my customers to do is to follow the 3D process. First of all, they need to document what good customer service looks like. And by the way, this can be any skill, right? Anything that you want your employees to do. And at this stage, you might have between 1 and 4 employees. You need to be very clear and very specific about what that looks like, right? So if customer service is what you want them to give, then you need to show them and be very clear and document what good customer service looks like. Then you need to demonstrate it yourself and show yourself deploying that playbook in order for them to be able to duplicate that playbook on their own. So there's document, there's demonstrate, and there's duplicate. And then ideally you want to drop in and do regular monitoring to see that duplication persists. Now, you at this stage you have maybe 1 to 4 people. And importantly, I think you want to pat yourself on the back a little bit here, because now only about 24% of businesses actually achieve this stage. And right now, unfortunately, there's just too much for one person to do. That's the big boss. Okay. And the skill that you need to master in order to level up is to get help, the right type of help that you make better by following the 3D process. You feel super chaotic, right? Like everything's going in lots and lots of different directions. And you yearn for that stability that you might have had before you became an entrepreneur. You need to learn how to sell consistently. You need to learn how to onboard customers properly. You need to fix the things that your customers complain about. You also need job descriptions. You need to find a payroll provider to be able to handle this thing called employment. You need playbooks to, like I said, document, demonstrate, and have your team duplicate what you do. So there's a lot going on at this stage. And yes, this is how some folks plateau at 1 to 2 helpers. But really, the benefits of getting past this boss are huge, which is what the next stage is all about.
Yeah, awesome. So I think that stage is pretty well explained. So I think I'd love to spend a bit more time on the next stage actually, because I think the next stage is an interesting pivot point. So it's kind of counterintuitive. So this is prioritize, and it's an interesting one because in the first 3 stages you are obsessed with a demand problem. So you're trying to solve for the problem of we don't have enough patients. All of your attention is there. More patients, more patients, more patients, outreach, advertise. And generally, you're in that space for quite a few months, years, and some people stay there for a long time, many many years. But now, once you kind of pivot into stage 4, the prioritized stage, you actually start to find that you've got the patient flow, you've worked out the customer service kinks that we talked about above. You're starting to have a supply problem, so you've got enough demand. It's an interesting change. So then the problems become very different. You have problems fitting in people for initial consultations, which we know, the chances of conversion go down dramatically if you can't fit in people in the first week from when they call. So things like that become a really big issue. So we struggle to kind of get the efficiency of the service going. And we find that practices are offering many, many services, and there's a lot of variability in the profitability of those services. So there's some decisions to make. So what do you do at this stage, Rod?
Well, now is when you have to niche. So at the moment right now, you're the big boss here is you're trying to be everybody, or rather everyone to everybody. That's the big boss. And you graduate this stage by niching down to serve only your ideal customers. Now, at this stage, you become a manager. And being a manager is essentially another word for a decision maker. You have maybe 5 to 9 people on your payroll. And I think it's important to keep in mind that only about 3 million companies in the US get to this stage. So you're very, very, you're near the tip of the spear now. May not sound like a lot, but actually, not a lot of businesses get here. So this is all about focus and priorities, right? You cannot serve everyone and you can't do everything. So you need to choose what's most important and focus on that. And that can be really, really hard. I find that there's a lot of my clients that get stuck at this stage because they just refuse to prioritize. They have maybe 10 different little businesses, meaning they've got like a laser refractive business, they got a little bit of lens on the side, they got some glaucoma, they might do some dry eye, they might do some AMD, they might do some general ophthalmology, right? So they got like maybe a half a dozen different businesses that are all trying to juggle in one, which is creating massive amounts of chaos and is disabling their ability to prioritize. So they got to pick their ideal customer, right? That means adding qualification and knowing who you'll say yes to and who you'll say no to. Saying no to those rest, right? By adding friction and setting up basic systems like even Google Sheets just to manage some basic metrics. Really creating clear rules. Maybe you have employees now, so you want to create an employee handbook, maybe some policies, and you want to measure what matters, right? So you want to get a CRM, a customer relationship management system. At this stage, you want to be getting your accountant or your bookkeeper to furnish you with some basic financial statements like profit and loss, cash flow statement that you have a look at on a regular basis, say monthly, and so that you can really get a handle on this. But again, it's about niching down. It's about identifying those underperformers and really making that tough Sophie's choice, right? You've created these children businesses, right? You're really, really proud of them. Some of them need to say goodbye, though. You need to basically say, I need this one to go away and that one to go away so that this one can live. And that's really hard. That's really, really hard because most people worry about what they're going to lose instead of what they're going to gain. But we all know that experts and specialists perform best when they're focusing on one thing and one thing only. And so this is a choice you need to make at this stage in order to graduate to the next.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about the psychological side of this, because this is a tough stage. People really get stuck here. So can you maybe give us an example of maybe one practice that we've seen that didn't make the choice versus one that did? Sort of give us a sense of like what happened for each scenario.
Well, I mean, the ones that don't make the choice stay in the same stage, and the ones that do make the choice elevate to the next one. That's what mainly happens. And by the way, that's okay. Like, if you want to run a practice that stays in the prioritized stage, and you don't necessarily want to move beyond that, I think it's unfair and unnecessary to expect and to demand that everybody just grow, go, grow, go, grow. Some people just want to stay where they are, and that's okay. And other people who want to move forward, well, then they have to do the things that those people who want to stay where they are don't want to do. Now, I can think of numerous examples of practices that either stay in this stage and would like to grow, but aren't prepared to do the things that those who do grow have to do in order to get to the next stage. I think the specific examples perhaps are valuable, but they probably take a long, long time to get into. But just I think the bottom line here is that you have to prioritize, you have to niche, again, if you want to optimize to move to the next stage.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think that's a really, really good point. I think that the analogy we often use is, like you're taking like a teaspoon or a teacup full of water and you're either pouring it across 10 plants, you really don't get much movement there, not much growth, versus pouring it on one and you actually get that thing to grow. But I think that's a really good point that I think you've got to start at the beginning of all of this is say, what do you want? I think it's very much the goal. And some people get a lot of pleasure out of working on different procedures. Totally fair. This is really, I think we're solving for business growth and kind of getting on that trajectory to scale and maybe exit down the line. But there is, I'm gonna say we're gonna bring this back in stage 6. There is a chance to build multiple services, but we're suggesting there's probably a more focused way to do it. So you can bring in other services later once you've mastered an individual stage. But we'll talk about that in stage 6. So let's not skip a stage though. Let's go to stage 5. So we've got the challenge in refractive surgery that, you get your practice up and running. Patients come in, they pay a good, it's a profitable procedure, and then they leave, unlike other businesses. So this is called structural churn. And it's really built into the system. You don't have a back end or something to sell afterwards, generally, unless you design it. And so, how do you find practices can deal with this built-in constraint in a refractive business?
So you have to create another premium product. Now, this may sound somewhat counterintuitive compared to the previous stage, which was about prioritizing which product could survive. And you may bring back a product or a service line that you extinguished or let go or left underdeveloped previously. Now, at this stage, you want to be really thinking about bringing that one back, but mainly because you've had the opportunity and the time to fix all the problems with the first product. Okay. So at this stage, you're a director and you might have 10 to 19 people with you. And only about 2.4 million businesses in the US get to this stage. Now you've niched, but customers have nothing else to buy from you. You need something new to sell them, essentially. You graduate against this boss by making and selling a second premium product to your customers. Now, those examples might be, for example, offering a dry eye service in addition to what you offer to your primary customers, which is LASIK, or moving and expanding from lens and buying a machine to do laser eye surgery, right? There's numerous different sideway moves and also upgrade moves, downgrade moves. There's lots of different moves that you can make and offer a new procedure or a new product line. What's important here is you want to ideally offer a product line that is related in some way or done before or done after your main product line. So you get the benefits of the work that you've done to create the customer and so that you can sell that customer again, or maybe sell that customer before your main product. All right. So at this stage, you have to create new products. You have to sell more to your existing customers. That's what we call ascension. That can either be done through upsells or cross sells or downsells. And you need to make everything more professional. So this is where you have to really start talking about more realistic expectations with your customers, make delivery more consistent, right? Really focus on customer service, start measuring that, not just patient acquisition. You need to be also setting up proper operating systems. And a proper operating system looks like an org chart, value engine mapping, for critical business processes, playbook engineering, critical accountability bullets for every person in your team, a company scorecard where you're measuring all the important metrics that you want to measure from the overall company, a meeting rhythm so you can architect the communication rhythm that you're going to have with your employees, so you can pass on how they're doing, what they need to do, and what's changing. And then you need to start working a little bit on mission and values. So really, this is very much about starting to extract yourself from working in the business and starting to work on the business. This is when your business begins to feel like a real business. It's a company that can continue to grow for years. And you don't just need to do one thing well. Now you have to start doing many things well. The key here is balance. So you want to stay profitable while investing in growth. Growth costs a lot of money, right? You either capital expenditure or spending more money on facility upgrades, improving your service, putting more money into patient acquisition, right? It all costs. So you need to stay profitable while you do that. And that means making a budget, making it profit first, and saving for big expenses in a CapEx fund, and also, ideally, maintaining a good old emergency fund for when rainy days come.
Cool. Okay. Okay. And finally, stage 6, we're looking at optimize. So team is hitting 20 plus. We're starting to get more chaos again that we saw earlier, but this is on a larger scale. So what are some metrics that we need to start looking at? What are some things that we can do to not grow the chaos, manage the chaos now that we're so big?
Yeah, so I mean, there's three main metric families that I would look at. I mean, there's countless metrics you can measure, but the three main categories I would make sure I'm measuring is in measuring employee performance. By at this stage, at least 30 to 40% of your expenditure is going to employees. So you want to be measuring their performance and ensuring you get good return on investment for that. You also want to be measuring customer satisfaction, right? I said that earlier, but you really want to formalize it now. You want to be doing NPS, maybe CSAT, and you also want to be doing financial metrics, right? Like I said, taking those initial monthly reports and now start to observe gross profit margins, cash flow cycles, things like that. So this is a sales velocity. So these are all the different kind of metrics that you can focus on. But I'd say focus on the three family: the employee performance, customer satisfaction, and financial metrics. So whereas before you were kind of like a manager, then you went to director, now you're starting to embody the leader. You have managers beneath you, right? And the definition of a leader is that you create other leaders. And now you have about 20 to 49 people, okay? And there's only about 2.1 million companies that arrive at this stage. So this is very rare indeed. You are facing the big boss of inefficiency, okay? As you have more people, as you complexify the processes, as you bring more business on board, you have more inefficiency. Everything is inefficient at this stage. So you graduate by doing things better instead of just doing more things. Where all of the previous stages you were focusing on more, right? More employees, more customers, more cash, more profits. This stage is about making things better. So you really have to flip the script now. And now you need to look. So what do you make better? Well, you need to improve your existing products and systems. And it's hard to improve two products, harder than it is to improve one product, right? So things get lost. And you just imagine what it's like to try to improve 6 or 10 products. It's way harder. So now you're trying to improve two products. That's hard. Now you're trying to make things more efficient, right? Your ads, your sales velocity, your customer service, your fulfillment, your time. You want to fix what's broken, right? Two products are going to slow down improvements, so you need to prioritize again and ensure that you're consistently elevating the value of these products so you can start out competing in competition. And you need to build better processes, right? Human resources is where you're really going to start spending a lot of your time and energy, because now you got 20 to 49 people, and that creates an enormous amount of complexity, right? Groups always go slower. So the key here is patience. Making things better takes time, and you can't rush the optimization game. Better beats more, and that's how you grow from here.
Awesome. Thank you. So I have a few sort of listener questions in my mind that I hear all the time from surgeons. So looking at the 6 stages now, so I'm sure that listening to the differences between the stages, some people are thinking, oh, cool. So I've got 3 bullet points from stage 2, and I'm actually doing 3 bullet points from stage 3, and it looks like I'm also doing a couple from stage 5 or 1 from stage 6. Is that a sign that they're progressing or are more advanced as a business?
No. Short answer. The long answer is, look, the stages are based on your head count, and you're not in multiple stages at the same time, and you're not in the stage that's beyond your head count or below your head count. You're in the stage where your head count is. Now, you may think you're at another stage with fewer or more people, but only if you've beaten the boss and the constraint that you have to face at that level. And too often, I see way too many entrepreneurs busying themselves, concerning themselves, wasting their resources with the wrong problems, the wrong constraints. Okay. They're working on the wrong things. In my view, business is a strategy sport, and strategy is a fancy word for prioritization. And you really want to be focusing on only 3 things in your business. Number 1 is getting more customers. Number two is making those customers worth more by either keeping them around longer if you have a retention service, or upselling them and upgrading them and ascending them to future products that you may then develop. And the last thing you want to be doing is you want to be sure that you reduce the risk of those first two things, getting more customers and making them worth more, from continuing to happen. So you're now focusing on risk reduction, de-risking the business. If there's anything outside of those three things that you're doing, then you're working on the wrong things. And so this is why this stage journey is really very valuable, because now you can really start focusing on what matters most and really handling one problem at a time. That's how you handle growth. Many people think that they can handle growth by doing lots and lots of different things at the same time. That's a great way to drive yourself crazy and not get anywhere. Instead, you want to focus all of your energy, all of your power, all of your resources, and your attention on what is going to take you to the next level. And I have a bit of a question that I ask people whenever I encounter them. It's like, what is the one thing that is holding you back from taking your business to the next level of growth, right? Out of these 6 stages, for example. After a bit of back and forth questioning, we usually arrive at the one thing. And that thing is the big boss of that stage. And when we've identified that big boss, then the next question is there anything else you're doing other than working on this one thing? And if the answer is yes, the response from me is stop it. Really, just stop it. Because none of those other activities are getting you further down the road. What you need to do is focus on the big boss and the skills that you need to master in order to beat him.
Awesome. Great. So I think that we that was a great way to kind of wrap things up. The power of focus. So know the stage you're at, and really it's focus that allows you to grow faster, counterintuitively. So are you monetized? Let's see if we can get them all here. Are we monetized? Your constraint is your practice makes no money, and your task is to make your first sale. Are you at the stage of advertise, where your constraint is that your new customers or patients are inconsistent, and you need to graduate to let more people know about you? Are you at stabilize, where there's just too much for you to do, basically, and you graduate by getting help? Are you at prioritize, where you're trying to be everyone to everybody, and you can graduate on that stage by niching down and serving only your ideal patients? Are you at productize, where you've niched, but customers have really nothing else to buy from you? And then do you graduate by making and selling a second premium service or product to get some more revenue and make those customers even happier? Or are you at optimize, that rare breed who basically has succeeded and so well that everything is now inefficient? And basically you need to graduate by doing things better, working on efficiency. There are a few other stages, which I think we will tease that out. There's 3 kind of bonus stages for sort of the larger sizes of companies, but very, very few practices get there. But certainly there are other things to know. But I think these really apply to the vast majority of private ophthalmology practices. So I really want to thank you so much, Rod, for the discussion and great insights today. It's been really great digging a bit deeper into that April CRST cover story. I really hope that you have, listeners, identified the stage and have a couple of next steps there to kind of look at that trigger and start thinking about how can you, that's the goal, like get to the next level. How can I level up? Thanks again to CRST as well for the opportunity to share this today. Really enjoyed it. And I wanted to say that usually there are tons of questions whenever we talk about this. So both Rod Solar and myself, I'm Laura Livesey, we answer questions every day on LinkedIn. So we talk all about how do you double ophthalmology practices? How do you triple your profit? Like, what do you actually do? So come to LinkedIn, come over to the community, hook us up, say hi, and bring your questions, please. We're always looking for questions to answer. So come on by and we'll talk growth, scale, and exit. This has been a pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much. Bye for now.
For more shows like the one you just listened to, check out the podcast channel on itube.net.